Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As always, I hope everyone's doing well for wherever you're watching in the world or watching in the United States. Hope everyone is enjoying their day. This is from the verse videos for the new year for Rebuilding Community Trust. For those who are new, welcome to the channel. This channel is made to inform, to empower, to encourage those to understand the stuff that's going on in their communities, law enforcement related, political related, whatever fits your boat in this aspect. And for those who's been tuning in, thank you as always for tuning into the channel. Support is always appreciated, and please continue to share and subscribe, or send out to those who may need to hear what's going on. So this is the first video for the new year. For those, I might have said on my other channel, but Happy New Year to those who's tuning in, and I hope everyone is getting a good start off to the year. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to do a small teaching. As we'd all seen in the news, the verdict for Kim Potter, former Minnesota police officer, was convicted for first and second degree manslaughter in relation to the killing of Dante Wright during a traffic stop. And also, we also know the verdict's out for the McMichaels and their associates. And they also has been charged for life in prison, convicted for life in prison. And I know one is eligible for parole. So there's a lot going on in the news right now related to law enforcement or dealing with racially motivated criminal activity. And I just wanted to shed some light on what's the definition of manslaughter. I know there's something, some people may know what it is, some people may not. So I'm going to take a little bit of time real quick just to go over some few definitions and kind of get familiar with these terms. As you know, Kim Potter, she was charged with it. So it's good to know what it is and know how important it is. Difference between actual murder and homicide versus manslaughter. So first things first, with manslaughter, first thing you want to understand about it is it's still considered a homicide. There's three types of manslaughter. You have involuntary, voluntary, and vehicular manslaughter, right? The definition of manslaughter in its totality is the crime of killing of a human being without malice, aforethought, or otherwise in circumstances not amounting to murder. When you think of involuntary manslaughter, right, it is basically under unintentional killing. It means that basically you didn't mean to kill the person. And there are examples of like, we talk about also vehicular manslaughter as well as involuntary is homicide. DUIs, texting and driving, discharging a firearm. Also, the heat of passion is considered, involuntary in some cases. And these are important to understand because these are crimes that are very can be, scrutinized and looked at real deeply in the sense of knowing what's intent and what's not intent. We think of murder. Murder is premeditated. Murder is thought out. Murder is something that it requires malice, requires a motive, and it requires some thought, right? But with manslaughter, it can be voluntary and still can be intentional, but also it can be unintentional, where you can accidentally kill somebody, not with so much the intent, but you still have to be charged, with something. You can't just go around and accidentally, you're a DUI, you're drinking and you're incapacitated and you accidentally run a child over, for example, that could be considered unintentional killing, but you still killed the person. And even with that's still, although you didn't mean to commit the crime of murder or homicide, you still should be charged because of the events building up to that. If you're drinking and you shouldn't be driving, that's example of manslaughter or even murder in some cases, depending on how the jury and judge sees it or the court sees it. So that's involuntary. Voluntary, again, is an unintentional killing. When you do with a voluntary manslaughter, it's like murder. You thought of it. You made a decision to kill, and it's a conscious thought, right? For example, the definition is the killing of a human being in which the offender acted during the heat of passion. It could be also fall again involuntary, but also involuntary is more cases than that with the heat of passion, where under circumstances that will cause a reasonable person to become emotionally or mentally disturbed to the point that they cannot reasonably control their emotions. and that's basically voluntary. So it's more or less an emotional response to murdering or killing someone, right? Examples of that is dealing with most cases we all hear about the significant other being caught in the act of sleeping around, or you catch someone, or a wife or husband or a significant other catches their so the other person inside, with another person, they catch them in the act of sex, or if you've been married, commit adultery, or, if a girlfriend is cheating. And that's an example of voluntary manslaughter where, movie show or even media where guy catches his girlfriend or wife in the bed with another man, and he pulls a gun out and shoots and kills them both. That's voluntary because it has a heat of passion, emotion, and the reason, and you're not thinking, you're not being logical with what you're doing. So therefore, you go out and you commit a crime, commit a murder, or killing of another person. Some self-defense in regards to the emotion as well. Like, I guess, for example, if a woman is in an abusive relationship physically, and she, been abused multiple times, and this one particular time, her emotions, her anger, her rage, she gets a hold of a weapon and she ends up killing that abuser, or vice versa. Then that could be considered, is that self-defense, is that voluntary manslaughter? It just, again, depends on how the court sees it, and depend on the evidence, and depend on the case, how it's been laid out. So in the instance of voluntary and involuntary, we look at the Ken Potter case, and we all, it's public knowledge. You can go in and look on the news and read the accounts and the articles and stuff like that, the case, or if you watch the case. But basically, she pulled out her actual firearm, and police her firearm. I can't get it out right now, but she pulled it out, and instead of her taser, and she pointed, aimed, and pulled the trigger on Dante Wright, and killed him. Other factors were thrown in there. They analyzed the fact that it was someone else's life, another officer's life in danger. Some other factors were included, but in this case, it was although she meant to pull out the taser, she pulled out the gun, and it was considered unintentional, or in some cases where she should have known better, but she put out the wrong gun, the wrong weapon, and used deadly force, and that was considered manslaughter. So in that case, you have to analyze the facts and see. Some people think it was intentional, that she probably meant to do it, but I truly, from reading the accounts, I think she didn't mean to do it. It was a very rookie mistake on a police officer that's been trained. She's a field training officer. She's training other officers. She's been in the force a long time. To me, is no excuse that you can't differentiate between your police issue firearm and your taser. So that to me was just very, I don't know, was it fear, whether it was the heat of the moment, it could be the heat of passion, it could be she's thinking about the other officer that was possibly in danger, she's thinking about the scenario, depending on whatever it may be. If you've been through the scenario multiple times in your 26 years of serving as a police officer, you have to really, be frazzled to make a decision like that, or just, we don't know whether it's intentional or unintentional at the end of the day. But from the court standpoint, it was an unintentional shooting and killing of Dante Wright. So now you move into the first degree, second degree murders, right? And when you think of premeditated murder as first degree, she was charged with first degree, first and second degree manslaughter. So when you think of first degree in murder or manslaughter, it is the most serious, involving premeditated and intentional murder or manslaughter. Second degree is the next step down, but still involve intent to harm or kill. And then third degree murders are the next step down, whether it was just, at this point it was, considered, self-defense or unintentional, as it's a lesser offense when it comes to manslaughter or murder, right? So she was charged with first and the second degree. So she was, go back to the beginning, the definition, she had a thought. They said it was premeditated or thought of. The way, the prosecution defense looked at it, she pointed and aimed the gun at Dante with the intent to shoot. And whether she thought it was a taser or a gun, the intent was clear when she pointed it at, Dante. And when you point a weapon, and especially whether it's a taser or a gun, you have an intent there to use it, right? You shot his center mass or at his areas, critical areas, and shot and pulled the trigger. So that's where the first degree came in. And then the second degree was, again, you had intent to harm or kill, in the sense of you thinking it's a taser, but it really was a weapon. The caveat to this situation with her is that whether she should have known whether it was a gun or a taser, due to they looked at the ballistics of the weapon, as far as the weight of the weapon. A gun is heavier than a taser. The color of the taser is yellow and black versus the gun is a gray, dark color. It's a lot of different things you have to look at when you're pulling your gun. And even for me, being, deal with law enforcement, I knew the difference, when you have a weight of a gun versus the dynamics of a taser, right? And then also the positioning of where your taser and where your gun is. I'm right-handed, so my right-hand gun is going to be on my right-hand side. If you got a taser, sometimes it's in the center or it's on the other side of your belt. And depending on how what you're shooting, your strong shooting arm, your dominant, hand, or dominant shooting weapon hand, right? You're going to, reach in and use your taser one position versus another with the gun. So it's just a lot of factors that were thrown in when it came to this case in particular, when it comes to, whether, how they charge her for first or second degree. So those are the differences between manslaughter. Voluntary, and then it's vehicular. Now, vehicular is during a car under the influence of alcohol or any drug, driving in the car in a reckless manner, or driving a car with disregard for the safety of others, whether inside or outside the vehicle. So vehicular manslaughter is when, again, it's using a weapon. The car is a weapon, whether you're intentional or voluntary or non-intentional or involuntary. So you just got to look at these different definitions. Vehicular, again, is DUIs. You could be, a heat of passion. Excuse me. Heat of passion can also apply to vehicular manslaughter, because you can maybe catch your significant other inside of committing adultery, right, or sleeping around with another person, and you might not do nothing to them then, but you may be outside, you may run them over. That's, using a vehicle as a weapon. That's considered manslaughter or even murder. Or, you could be, accidentally run a child over, just maybe not paying attention to what you're doing. That could be also vehicular manslaughter. So whether it's intoxication and incapacitation through drugs, whether you actually were not paying attention, you weren't aware, you weren't vigilant on watching what you were doing, it's still considered a manslaughter, vehicular. So that's the kind of definition with that. So those are the types of definitions of manslaughter. It seems like, again, the difference between murder and manslaughter is that murder is a premeditated, thought out, planned commission of a felony or a crime, in the sense of killing a human being. And then there's when it is for manslaughter, it is more or less unintentional or intentional in nature, and it may you may not have the full knowledge or the awareness of what you're doing, but you still end up killing a human being. And that's that's the gray area between murder and manslaughter, because it's an unintentional or intentional act of a commission of a crime. So that's kind of the differences. And again, it relates to Kim Potter. That's kind of why I'm doing this, so people can understand what manslaughter really is. But, since she didn't so much know, or quote unquote didn't know, that she was pulling her weapon instead of her taser, it falls under some realm of unintentional. Or she admitted, and also her admission on the stand, that she knew that she didn't mean to do it. And she also was aware and knowledgeable that she confessed that she unintentionally pulled her gun instead of her taser. So that kind of gave her some leeway when it came to being charged with manslaughter instead of murder. So in that case, was the lies of the other officer and non-compliance of Dante caused her to act that way, in the sense of feeling like she needed to pull her gun, or she felt like she pulled a taser but pulled her weapon. Was it a knee-jerk reaction? The lawyers and the defense and prosecution had different things to say in that. And also, you got to look at departmental policy. It was interesting in the case when I read that the departmental policy didn't require her to use a taser in action. But again, you got to look at all the cases, the casework when it comes to her, what happened, with the Dante, him getting into the struggle and using maybe possibly pulling off with the officer in the car and he's trying to get him to stop driving. Either way, I feel like if it was that to the point where he was non-compliant and he was causing maybe a possible danger, then definitely a taser was in order. But again, we don't know. You got the body cam footage, and I didn't really watch the full trial. I just read the highlights and from the article. But from what was said, that officers, Department of Policy may not require her to use a taser. They could have just used maybe OC. They could have used the officers that were there. But then when the vehicle's in motion, whether backwards or forwards, then you could probably understand and look at maybe a taser could have been used. But regardless, at the end of the day, for veteran officers, as are not only just been on the force for 20 something plus years, but for her to be training and being a field training officer and went to countless courses and refresher trainings and complying with the annual or semi-annual training that is required by post or the credentials of officers for in Minnesota, is no excuse that she should not know the difference between a taser and a gun. So, we can look at motives. We can say that it was her. She intentionally may have done it based off her fear factor. We can look at all things, but at the end of the day, it's unacceptable that officer with that much experience, even with a rookie, someone who's been in the force less than a year or 2 years, still unacceptable with that. But it would be more looking at, I won't say feasible, but more understandable, I guess, in a way. Not really say it's understandable. There's no exception to kill anybody, but making those rookie mistakes. But someone who's been in the force for 20 plus years, it, to me, is no excuse. There's no excuse whatsoever for her to not to know the difference between a taser and a gun. So when it comes to that, we look at sentencing, right? We look at each state has their own sentencing policies, the guidelines. So end of the day, they're looking at, in Minnesota, her sentencing won't start till February 18th. The trial for the sentencing, or the court sentencing her for 7 years for first degree charge in the state of Minnesota, and 4 years for second degree manslaughter. Prosecution is seeking a longer sentence, but when you look at state rules and federal, is different. Obviously state has a different set of standards when it comes to first degree, but each state, and this is what I charge people to look into when they're dealing with their state laws and learn their laws, find out what is some of the sentencing guidelines in each state, because it's different. Manslaughter may not be the same in Minnesota as it is in Georgia or Florida or Texas. So as you learn your laws, I recommend and encourage people to learn the sentencing guidelines for each crime, because it may be, simple, it may be smaller in some states, it may be larger, right? But in Minnesota, 7 years for first degree and 4 years for second degree manslaughter. That's just kind of what they're going for. And also serving good behavior. It could be, she may get out earlier. She may, people thinking she's going to go to Gen Pop. Maybe not, saying they may put her in a special cell, solitary or isolated confinement. Who knows what the judge is going to say, but I know they're going to shoot for the 7 years for first degree and 4 years. So that'd be 12 years, 12 years. She may serve less time for that. But it's just the culture of racist, or racial injustice in relation to law enforcement is starting to take a turn. I think people are getting tired of it, and it's starting to really show that no longer the standard of just officers just going and doing stuff like that and not following departmental guidelines. They're not, you're not using the training that you've been taught, and it's a really sticky and fine line when it comes to not only just the people that police officer arrests, but also the police officers themselves. It's very sticky because, again, any little move, you're getting scrutinized, and you could possibly be thrown in jail or lose, get fired, or even worse, where you're about to do 12 years, or in Derek Chauvin's case, which is, I'm sorry, rightfully so, because what he did was unacceptable. You're serving a lot of time, right? So it's a standard being set now with law enforcement officers to make sure that they're doing everything by the book, in the same time staying safe and being able to perform their duties and responsibilities and not get killed at the same time. So it's a really, really, really tough job, even more tough now because of these things like this are happening. Interesting enough, people saying it's political, right? She's a scapegoat because, one, she's a woman, and two, she's killed another African American, and this is the third shooting in the last 2-3 years in Minnesota. Muhammad Noor killed an Australian woman, then George Floyd with Derek Chauvin, now Kim Potter with Dante Wright. So now Minnesota is making a scapegoat out of officers now, because again, this is the third incident where African American man was killed by the hands of a police officer due to negligence, or where they just recklessly not doing their duties and responsibilities, and people are dying because of it. So now Minnesota is really cracking down on officers, and it's also not only just for Minnesota, state of Minnesota, but also for officers around the country, to make sure that, hey, you're not going to you're going to do things by the book, by the policy, or you're going to start getting you're going to start going to jail, right? So this is a case of just scapegoat, make an example. The toll and the pressure of law enforcement to get it right is starting to be shown, and I'm sure as more cases come out, that people are, that hasn't made the news or not public, not real public knowledge, people are going to start really cracking down. And it starts with enforcement of departmental policy. It starts with, even refresher training. Again, it's again, we don't know the details of whether it was a mistake in the sense of her being a fearful or a training. I try to look at both sides of the coin, because again, a lot of people look at the one side where the officer shoots and kills somebody, but they don't look at the other side where officer actually has to deal with the pressure of that moment when you're inside of a situation where you respond to a call, where you're dealing with a person that maybe has a dangerous weapon, or they may put their lives in danger, and that changes everything when your life is in danger. No one understands that other side. They just understand that the officer killed this person. They don't understand that maybe that person they killed, and I'm playing devil advocate, but in a sense where that person that tried to kill the officer, or the person that's giving the officer a hard time, could put their lives in danger. And there's officers that follow the policy and follow the guidelines, and they try to not, pull their weapon. They end up getting killed. They end up getting shot and killed. I think I did a video a while back where an officer that responded to a guy, he pulled out an AK and shot and killed the officer. So it's a very fine line when it comes to stuff like this. I'm not advocating for people that do wrong, especially, those who are officers. But people got to look and understand both sides. They can't just, look at one side when it comes to the person getting killed and the officer to kill them. We don't really fully know, even with the body cams, every step by step, second by second, of what really happened with the situation or the call that's at hand. And the body cam is designed to capture those moments. But sometimes it's just, we can't capture everything about what happened with the officers per se, and the victims and the perpetrators and the suspects, right? So overall, understanding the position of law enforcement, it really is getting dire, to the point where officers just got to be careful in how they respond to the public, and knowing that you have to follow everything from the T for the guidelines, and try your best to de-escalate. Try your best to not, pull your gun, deadly force and stuff like that. But then there's some cases where you just can't. You have to. And depending on what happens and how that particular call goes down, there's just going to be situations where you just got to use your weapon, and you got to pull the trigger and use deadly force in need. And then there's times where you got to discern and use police discretion on where you should not use deadly force. And even a taser, knowing where your weapons are, training, and constantly remembering and responding to situational awareness when it comes to pressure, and when it comes to that's on the no crap, I'm in a dangerous situation, having backup, having call, all those resources to try to prevent yourself from getting caught up in a situation where you're pulling your gun and using it. So because there's always any bullet that comes out of that gun, it's got to be accounted for. So that's kind of what I want to talk about with manslaughter. Again, knowing the terms are important, especially when it comes to the communities and the people in it, because again, you be faced with a situation where you may find yourself having to you might get into a situation where you unintentionally kill someone, or you may use self-defense or heat of passion. And, with domestic violence cases going up, this is something important, because, again, you catch someone in the bedroom, or you might lose your temper or your emotions, and you go out and you pull a gun or a knife or deadly weapon and you use it. It's going to be a difference between murder and manslaughter. And it's going to be a very fine line and very gray area to know which one you're using. in court, because again, when you're thinking about manslaughter, it's not just, oh, what I'm saying, I accidentally killed somebody. No, it's premeditated. You could be premeditation, and that determines life. That determines years in prison. So I just hope people kind of understand the difference, and really look at the laws in your state, and understanding that it's important for you to understand, to know, and to keep up on the laws, and educate your communities, and educate the youth, and really knowing the difference between what's murder and what's manslaughter. Because again, and that could also go for the victims too. So for example, if someone it gets killed, right, and your brother or a father or a mother or a sister or a friend, and they go to trial and they get manslaughter, not understanding that, oh, you should be charged with murder because you killed my significant other, you killed my dad, you killed my mom, my brother, my sister. But then you don't know the laws of your state, and you don't know how this case played out, to where they should have got murder or manslaughter, or they might get manslaughter because it might have been unintentional. It could have been any scenario where it could be a drunk driver, and they were drunk and they incapacitated, and they run over your daughter, or they run over your sister, or a little kid, and then it should be for murder, but then it may be manslaughter. And then, depending on what it is. So knowing the laws help. Understanding your state laws help. Whoever's watching, tuning in, learn your state laws and learn how they play out in the court of law. Because, again, it makes a big difference. And even for knowing, you might can be able to educate yourself, and even look at casework and look at cases that have been put out, and they could be overturned. They could be looked at a different way. But you got to understand these things and know them. So I hope this helped. I hope this kind of gives you a little basic insight of what manslaughter is. There's more to it, of course. Again, each state looks at it differently. So I just hope it gives you a entry level understanding of this case, and far as manslaughter and the Kim Potter. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what the judge gives her in February. It may be, depending on how the judge and jury and how everyone in the court see it, and she may get more time. I don't think she'll get more time. I think she'll get is either exactly what they're going to give her, or they may give her less time. It just depends on what the judge does and what the judge gives, and what the verdict turns out. As far as the jury and all, and then the sentencing, the judge will look at it and see what he wants to give, and what she gets could be the standard for law enforcement officers that commit these type of crimes in the near future. So it makes it tougher and tougher. Some accountability is coming down the pipeline, to where, especially in state courts, because again, Minnesota's been taking a lot of serious high profile public media scrutinizing losses in the law enforcement community. And now I think they're getting tired, and they're going to start hammering people and catching and really doing it as far as accountability is concerned. If you can't get it right, you're going to jail. So we'll see what happens February 18th. Derek Chauvin got his sentencing. We'll see how that sticks as well. In his case, if it ain't already happened already. So that's all I have. I won't be here too long. Please share, subscribe. I hope this helps. I hope this kind of sheds some light on some stuff. And again, Happy New Year. Please, take time to educate yourselves on what's going on. There's a lot finna go on the pipeline. Stay tuned to Freedom Fighters channel. Those who are interested in that and want to see what I'm doing in that. Got some videos I'm put out, series and stuff like that. And then of course, we're going to launch Breaking Barriers very soon. Hopefully it's in the first quarter of this year. So stay tuned for the links on that, Breaking Barriers Ministries. And we're going to have a lot of good content coming out. And just stay tuned for the things in the future. So I hope y'all be blessed. Stay tuned. Please subscribe, share, hit the bell for any notifications that things come out in the future. I'm going to try to be more consistent with my content on this channel. So just keep staying tuned to it. So y'all be easy, be blessed, and thank you for tuning in.